For the rest of us that aren't Ukrainians, I think the world, quite frankly, Kira, is surprised by the will of the Ukrainian people to stand up and fight. Are you?
Well, I'm not surprised. We have been fighting Putin for the last 8 years, and we had 3 revolutions in our country when we did not agree with what was going on with the direction of where we're moving in. But right now, it's a critical time because we know that we not only fight for Ukraine, we fight for this new world order for the democratic countries. We knew.
Wow. That's some shit, man. Sorry for the language, but does the rest of Ukraine know that, or is it just these elitist political leaders who are saying that Ukraine fights for the New World Order?
I mean, she said it like it was common knowledge right there.
Yeah, she said we.
So, I mean, I don't know, like, if the Ukrainians all knew that as common knowledge, and we just been left out, and only the conspiracy theorists, in quotation marks, knew about it. But,
So does what she say answer our question that this is the start of a globalist war?
I would say so. I would say so.
I would just argue that the war has already started. I feel like the start of this new globalist war was the people in Ottawa, or as far like from my story, that's when the war started. Other places like Paris and Italy, like they've been going on like this for a while, but
right.
from like my home and my story that I would tell to my grandchildren once this is hopefully all over in 50 years, is that the war started when
the truckers
went to Ottawa and the government fought back, really.
Yeah, I would go with that. Because, I mean, we were really compliant the whole time. Like, as a society, like, Canadian society was really compliant the whole time. Like, there were people that were, like, mad and didn't want to follow the rules, but as a rule, we mostly all, like, followed the stuff. But it just got to a tipping point where people were like, okay, like, enough is enough. And it seemed even reasonable at that point, you know, like, I don't know. And they still tried to, like, stop people from assembling and coming together and said that they're terrorists. And it's like, man, like, what are you defending that's that important? And I guess, like, it makes sense that this would be what they're defending that's so important.
Even more on that, actually. I guess the start of the war was the pandemic. Like, the Ottawa was an answer to the pandemic.
Yeah,
and I guess not as much the pandemic, but the government policy based on the
pandemic. Yeah, the type of policy they put in place, because, like, we've never seen anything like that before. Yeah. Like, I mean, people will say, well, they had vaccine passports for polio. Yeah. But, like, the restrictions weren't able to be as far-reaching as they are now. Like, we just have the ability to reach into everything now and manipulate it, like, completely. And they didn't have that ability then. So it's, I don't know, like, we're at a weird point in history right now, man.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely. So, I mean, where does this go? Where does this lead? This globalist war, the war that they're fighting for the New World Order.
That's a good question. Yeah. I don't know. Is it? I mean, I don't know if they're fighting to be able to just implement new types of government and such, or if they're going to try to, like, get rid of people who don't agree with that when it happens, or, like, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. It could literally be anything.
Who do you think is getting demonized more? The truckers or Putin right now? Or are they completely equal?
Honestly, like from what I've seen, it's been pretty equal, like of a demonization.
Because really, they've already started that like canceling people that disagree with them, starting with the truckers, and like this. Not that Putin's a good guy or anything, but just the like they're just putting everybody against them in that same lump. And
Yeah.
just because there's some mass maniacs like Putin and all that, it's like, you guys are like on the side of Putin and these crazy racist people. Like, no, like we're against this globalist movement. Like, I'm against war in all forms of the matter, but like I'm not gonna fight on the side of these elite powers in the world
No.
against the only good side would be that you'd be fighting against psycho mass murderer like Putin.
Yeah.
But like,
But who are you fighting him for? And if you're fighting him for a globalist movement, then it's like it doesn't. I don't know. It's just weird to me. Like,
I can't
they-
fight against Putin for Trudeau because I see them both as like both evil men who
yeah,
are pretty like they're along the same lines, power hungry, like all
Yeah.
that stuff. Like,
yeah. Because what needs to happen is a breakdown of power structures, just in general, so that people stop being oppressed. And like, you know, I know that's a utopic statement. Like, obviously, there's not going to be a time where there are no power dynamics. But like, it's just crazy to me that like I would fight on the side of a globalist movement just because the other guy that we're going against is bad. Like, the other guy's bad, so it's like, yeah, I'd like to fight against the bad guy, but by fighting against the bad guy, does that mean that I'm fighting for the other bad guy?
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
And
Like, we need a third side. We need a third side.
the side of the people,
Yeah.
really, like
They really divided
that's the
us.
thing, is that the people aren't on the side of political figures anymore. Like, there's no like out here in the real world, people aren't really worried that much about politics, and the people that are so far disillusioned and like out of the real world. They're not even in the real world
Mm-hmm.
because like none of that stuff matters to real people.
Yeah. It's just crazy, like how they were able to divide all the people who are involved in politics, and like a lot of people through the pandemic got involved in politics because the pandemic became a political issue. And so we had this huge lump of people now interested in the politics, and as soon as that huge lump came together, they got split apart, like ripped apart so far based on morals. And like, if you can rip people apart and say they are morally against your morals and your beliefs, then it's really easy for you to say, like, to demonize the other side. And that's how we get oppressed as all of the people. Like, all of the people are going to get oppressed. So it's like, instead of us all looking up at the actual issue, we're looking across, fighting against each other for no reason. It's to the gain of the people that are actually messing us all up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people too don't understand that, like, from that, like you were talking about the moral, like, people can divide themselves by saying that I'm on moral high ground opposed to you.
Right.
Because they don't understand that you can be against COVID. Obviously, COVID is a bad thing. People are getting killed by it.
Mhm.
People getting extremely sick. Like, I'm not for COVID. Like, I don't want anybody I know or love to get COVID. But you can be against COVID, but also against the mandates at the same time, because
Yeah.
they don't correlate what like people think they do, or even even masks, like they don't correlate to everybody you know getting COVID. Like,
Yeah.
eh,
Somehow.
but that's what the media and these politicians want them to believe and have gotten them to believe.
Kristen was telling me that they are like diagnosing people with like COVID derangement syndrome, maybe. It's like something along those lines. Basically, like these people who are super overly scared of COVID because of all of the fear mongering that's been going on. Like, that's what it says in documentation. Like, because of the fear mongering, we've created a new mental illness, which is people who are super, super afraid of COVID. Like, overly afraid for their risk level. And they think that they're just going to die. Like, I don't, it hasn't gone well. Like, they really didn't take into account people's mental health and like what pumping that much fear into people was going to do, or more nefarious things happened than what we want to believe. But
I feel like too that it could be sort of like a correlation to like a correlation between being Christian or even being religious and like being able to get over this fear mongering, because like if you're Christian you fear God and you know that obviously God is more powerful than some stupid pandemic.
Yeah.
So why would you be afraid of a pandemic when like God is all powerful? And even not in terms of the Christian God, but any God.
Any God.
Any
yeah.
God.
If you believe in the universe as like if you're spiritual in any way, then I think you can come to the understanding that whatever happens to you happens for a reason. And that like that's the be all. Like that's it. That's it. Like whatever happens to you happens for a reason. And that's just part of that's what this is. Like that's what we're doing here. That's what we're doing. And so yeah, they're really able to I don't know, see who's thinking what by how they react to this stuff. No. Wow.
We've been talking for 20 minutes.
Oh shit. Oh well, whatever. Whatever. We can go over this stuff again. So anyways, after technical difficulties, and then we just did another like 21 minutes of talking. We didn't have volume. So
let's bring ourselves way back. That was just like practice.
Yeah,
It was a
we
practice
just
run.
practicing.
We're just rehearsing
Yeah.
for our breaking news segment.
Yeah. Originally, we had talked about.
It was the human suffering, like Ukraine.
Yeah.
And the human suffering aspect.
Right. Yeah. And how. How you can be involved without actually supporting the globalist movement.
Right. Yeah, definitely. But so like I said, if you want to, like people who are worried about this human suffering aspect, like you see videos of places being bombed, like people having been injured after like these strikes by Russia in Ukraine. Like there's things you can do other than join the like any sort of military, or when it comes to it eventually like a draft, and essentially be joining Team Trudeau. Like if you're like us and you're hesitant of government, or even like, and I would say that I'm straight up anti-government at this point, even though that's almost illegal to say now, which is another reason why I'm anti-government.
Yeah.
Because in a democracy, it shouldn't be illegal to say that you are against government. But yeah, there's ways you can go and actually be helping people like all over the world as well, not just in Ukraine, and not just as an effect of what Putin or Biden is doing in Somalia or the Saudis are doing in Yemen right now. Like you can be helping people without being part of any sort of globalist movement by just like going with non-government organizations and like spreading actual love around the world rather than going to fight for a tyrannical government that we have over us right now against another tyrannical government. But in that, like, all that's happening is more human suffering. People are going to be dying, like innocent people, more or less, who are simply following the orders of the people who are like putting these governing things, like governing them so like tightly. Like it sort of comes back to, again, like the vaccine mandates. Like it's, I don't really know where I was going with that, but just like the like you can be against COVID, like in terms of human suffering, but also being against like being mandated to like get vaccinated and take these experimental vaccines, and to oppress, even if you took it and you're fine with that, or whether you're fine with that or not, but to be going out and expressing and like showing off your elitism, and in that actively oppressing another group. Like that's the same thing with going to this war. Like sure, you're taking the side of what you think is the moral high ground, but
at the end of the day, the situation isn't moral in itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there's going to be human suffering.
Yeah.
Like because of what you're doing, and you can either get on board with that because there could be less human suffering as a result of what you're going to do, or you could take the other route and actually be a human being and
help other
human beings. Exactly.
Yeah. Instead of being part of the machines that our governments create to fight against each other.
Yeah.
That cause all of the human suffering.
Let's talk again about the Africans in Ukraine then, since we missed that as well.
Yeah, right. So, I'll let you explain that.
Sure. So, in Ukraine right now, obviously people are fleeing from the country and seeking refuge, in this case, in Poland, because, like, Ukraine is under siege right now, and there's a coming war, so obviously the civilian population needs to get out of there. And there was an instance in Ukraine where there was a train heading to Poland, where, like, home free at that point, as far as they're concerned. And these African refugees as well, who were fleeing from whatever they were trying to get away from in their own countries, seeking better lives, are being abandoned in Ukraine by these white nationalist Ukrainians locking arms and not allowing this African populace to actually flee these airstrikes and bombardment, and they're literally leaving them out in the cold, and with no future of them being able to seek asylum in somewhere else that from the place that they were originally fleeing from, like, because they go to Ukraine and Ukraine is now under siege. So the plan is for everybody in Ukraine to go to Poland because it's close, obviously, and they need to get away from the area of war. But these people who fled from their African countries to Ukraine, now trying to flee to Poland, are not only being stopped by the Ukrainians, but told by the Polish government that they can't come in, like, to basically head back to where you came from.
So, yeah, it's this is an example of actual nationalism, and then we figure out how they're getting that bias is through race.
Yeah.
Therefore, we get white nationalism. Actual white nationalism.
Yeah. Like, and actual racism on top of that. Like, obviously it's inherent in white nationalism, but like straight up racism happening.
Yeah.
And another example of the human suffering that happens when not only this war starts breaking out, which it has, and like all this has happened, but the globalist movement that these elites are trying to strive for, like they've caused suffering since the beginning of the pandemic. Like, they've been trying to oppress people, and it's gotten to a point where they're leaving a populace of people to essentially die in a war-ridden country.
Because they're not as important as the people who deserve to be able to leave.
Exactly. The people who are willingly and knowingly, according to this PM at the beginning of our video, to be fighting for this new world order. And since they know that and they're fighting for it, they get the privileges that come with it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, going back to what people were saying about the Ottawa protests, like, this is white privileges. White privilege because these white Ukrainians, anyways, white nationalist Ukrainians, the racism against these actual African people, like this is all inherent in the system that they're bringing up.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we think back to even the Black Lives Matters protests, like, obviously, like, nothing has been done about that. Like, Aunt Jemima got canceled.
Yeah.
That was about the end of it.
Yeah. So, like, the whole point of the protests, like all of the protests that we've seen, is to end human suffering. But instead, what we get is virtue signaling from our politicians, and then maybe a few things might get changed. Superficial things might get changed so that they can say that they might have done something, but they really did nothing to deal with the actual issue at hand. And it happens every time.
They're really, it seems like, egging it on, and for a very purposeful reason. And again, it goes back to this globalist war that is turning into not as much a question mark anymore. These people, this globalist war is, I forget where I was going.
We're trying to end human suffering. Like, the whole idea is to end human suffering.
Exactly.
Instead, we get virtue signaling and the continual perpetuation of power and the expansion of that power as well. And they've used the situations that have, like, been around for the past couple of years to separate the populace of people who are the sufferers, because we're not the privileged class. Like, the people are not the privileged class. They've used the power to tear us apart from each other, to, like, start lobbing side to side, to be like, oh, well, you're the oppressor, and the other side's like, no, you're an idiot, because it's actually those people that are the oppressor. Or they're like, oh, well, you're the oppressor because you're allowing them to do this. And it's like, why can't we just say, look, we need to end human suffering? Oh, who's causing the suffering? Oh, look, it's these people who are making the rules and making the systems in a way that allow people to do things to make people suffer. So why don't we, instead of throwing balls at each other and throwing rocks at each other, realize that we're all on the same side? I mean, unless you're on the side of, like, you want there to be a higher power person or higher power class, and you want them to tell us what to do at all times, and if we don't listen, then we should just be kicked out. Like, if that's what you think, then, I mean, like, I'd like to know why, honestly. because like to me that's just weird, and that's how we cause human suffering. Because you like no, there's no human who can have that much power and not use it in a way that's bad. Because as soon as someone disagrees with you, and if it's like something that you're really passionate about, like even if you're a pretty like agreeable person, like there's gonna be something that you're like no, and then that like that battle there is what causes the suffering to happen, because you have the power to make those people who disagree with you suffer. And it's like why do we perpetuate that? Why do we let that continue to happen?
I mean, these elites are perpetuating it. Going back to my point earlier, they're perpetuating the instances of human suffering into instances where not only is there the original human suffering, but the addition of divisiveness, whether that be racism along political lines, whatever it may be, because like when they come in with this new world order and this globalist movement, they can say things like think to yourself even like, wouldn't it be great to have no more wars? Wouldn't it be great to have a united movement against the thinking back on the pandemic, if it were like world united, how great would that have been?
Yeah.
Or even on different issues that will come up in the future in terms of like global issues. But beyond that, like, wouldn't it be great to not have to argue about politics because there will only be the one politics and like the chosen members of the government. So you won't have to worry about that anymore. You won't have to worry about making decisions anymore. Doesn't that sound great? But again, the thing is that you don't get to make decisions. What you do doesn't matter on the mass scale whatsoever. And like again, like this doesn't stop the human suffering, because like when there's a group of elites, there's going to be a group of people who are suffering, and usually it's a very small group up top and a very large group at the bottom.
Yep.
And like that's what it's leading towards, is like they can say once they're up there that the world is on their side, when really like a small percentage of the world is on their side, and like basically the people who are in that elite globalist class, people who are in these big cities that are actually like contributing to the world or to the culture,
Contributing
like,
to the notion that we can continue to expand and grow forever, indefinitely, as if there's just never-ending resources and you can just keep collecting more until infinity, as if the Earth is just infinite. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
That's a whole other
what
thing.
they're trying to do is turn humans into their own resources, so that because like human energy and like the energy that we bring to the universe is infinite.
Yeah.
So like that's 100% what they want, and that's what happens when like you get that elite class, because the bottom class is obviously working for and propping up that big government. Like there's no success of politics without like the people doing something for it. Like whether that's taking things away from the people to be successful, or helping your people to create a successful country and economy and all that. Yeah.
I think-
and there's examples of that all over the world and in history as well.
Yeah, that just made me think, like, we know that we're getting to a point where we don't really have any more resources for people, like for the high up elite people. Like, they have all of the resources that they can already get. Like, they have access to all the resources that they want. So it's like, when you are hungry for more, there's only so many more things in the world for you to have dominion over, right? And like we're seeing now that they're making new policy for to be able to get like regular housing, like to be able to buy and trade that easier. Just like everything, like how people are educated, how you have to work. Like if you can have power over that, then eventually it's like, okay, well now I have power over how people have to do things. Now I just want power over the people themselves. And like when you let power grow indefinitely, like it reaches a point where each person is affected, like personally, like on a like super deep level. Like it seems to me that there are people that want to be God on the planet, and they're working towards that being a possibility. Maybe not for them specifically, but for the people who are like-minded to them. And I don't know, like it's just a scary thing to see. And it's scary when I see people that like I've respected be okay with that type of stuff, because like I know that like your character doesn't agree with that, and like you're just like lost in what's going on, like in this whirlwind of ideas and stuff, and like it's hard to like nail it all down and like figure out what's going on. But it's like the end of all of this, like if you forget about the whirlwind of things, it's like there are people on the planet. There are just people on the planet. We've come up with all of these ideas for how to deal with people on the planet, and for us to live together in a way that's like effective and whatnot. But like it's all just in our heads. Like it's absolutely real in the sense that like we have to, you know, like be a part of all of the stuff that's going on, but it's not real in the sense that like it can't go away. It's only as real as we let it be as people, and it seems as if now is a time that we either, as the populace of regular people, need to say, okay, well, we're done with that, because it's getting to a point where in order for someone to have more power than they already have, they'll have to be literally playing God. It's like now, like that's when it's like too far. It's too far. And if we let it ramp up too much further than where it is now, I don't know that it's stoppable. Or I don't think that it's stoppable. I mean, the amount of psychological manipulation going on right now is insane. And like, even just to convince someone like to stop, just stop, let's think, it's like almost an impossible task. And I mean, I guess that's why we started this podcast, right? Is so that we can, like, you and I can sit here, we can stop, we can think, and we can talk about what we're stopping and thinking about. And hopefully somebody else will be able to hear that, and then they'll be able to stop and think and have those conversations with other people, and, you know, try to like spread that as a movement in itself. Just stop and think.
Like that's just it. Like we're not trying to preach to you. We're not like trying to tell you what to think. We're just trying to tell you to think.
Yeah, like just stop and think. Like, I mean, I guess you can say, well, free will sucks. I'd rather not have it. I'd rather not have to make decisions. I would rather for someone to tell me what to do at every second of every day, and that would be great. But like, in you saying that, it's allowing the people who want that to happen to do it to the people who don't want it. And so it's like, even if you are on the side of, well, I want someone to be telling me what to do all the time, like, you should understand why people would be on the other side of that. Like, it makes full sense to me why I'm on the other side of that. Like, I don't want someone telling me what to do all the time. I want to be able to live my life.
Yeah, again, like going back to your idea, like the idea that we're all just actually humans on the earth and to forget about everything else. That's like exactly what these slides, like the pictures of what's going on around the world, is trying to tell you. It's just that we're all humans, and there's suffering going on literally all around the world. But the thing is that people nowadays, and it's purely, in my opinion, because of social media, especially things like Twitter, is that there's people lose the idea that there's actually people out there, but there's only opinions and ideologies, and if mine doesn't align with yours, then you're not actually a human to me. Like, you're all the way over there across the internet.
Right. Like,
so why would I care about you if your opinion is against mine?
Yeah, like, if you can think of every idea or opinion that you have, think of it as a circle, right? And you're not in the middle of the circle. You're on one of the sides of the circle. So there's this whole spectrum of opinions there. And it's like, at what point, like, around the circle are you going to cut off and say everyone past there is nothing? Like, their opinion doesn't matter to me at all. And, like, obviously you're going to be opposed to the person on the other side of the circle. Like, on the very other side of the circle, you guys are completely opposed to each other. But that's part of what keeps everything in balance. Like the right thing for normally it should, if there's not any manipulation going on, the right thing should prevail, right? But that doesn't mean that someone can't be on the other side of the circle. Like, the distribution of people will change to the right opinion eventually, as long as there's not manipulation. But if there's manipulation, you can cause people to more people to go to the wrong opinion, and that, I think, is what's really happening right now, especially because it's so easy for people to dehumanize anyone who opposes their views, and it's being praised. It's being praised by people, like, in power, who are supposed to be our leaders, and the smart people. And if the leaders and the smart people are dehumanizing others, then why shouldn't I dehumanize others? That's what happens. And, like, that's the problem in itself.
Yeah, definitely. It's the just forgetting that, like, we're all actually going through a very similar experience, and that is the human experience.
Yes.
And, like, the minute you lose sight of the fact that we're all the same is when you get into this globalist idea. Like, at the same time, though, like, it is a sort of globalist ideology to say that, like, we are all going through the same things, but at the same time, like, the way that they're doing it is like globalism isn't a bad thing. I know we've been putting it in a bad light this whole time, but people across the world, like, sharing ideas and becoming one isn't a bad thing whatsoever. But
it's when you allow a small group of people to be in control of that whole thing and how it works.
Yeah, and when that happens, there's bound to be human suffering and people who are just being completely neglected by this global power, because the whole idea of having our own countries or our own communities or our own whatever government thing is so that the people there can actually have an input into the policy. And although that's been going the complete wrong way lately, I feel like because of the New World Order movement that's going on, and like there's just people who are going to be completely left behind, and who are like, when the whole world is being told what to think, there's obviously going to be people who are opposed to it. And
are those people then terrorists?
Exactly. That's what they are saying, and what they've shown with Ottawa and again with these Africans in Ukraine, it's like, are like, if you're not part of the movement, then you don't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's I don't. It's really crazy, man.
And that's why we are here talking about Ukraine on our small fringe minority podcast. You'd think it might be an odd jump, but it's a clear jump, because when you actually think about the situation and what's going on, it all correlates, and it's all like, they know that it correlates because they planned it this way. But the thing is that once you realize that all these things are like coming together in a bad way, then I feel like we can start working in the other direction.
Even if you don't believe that it's purposeful, like even if you don't think that, you know, they're working together to do these things in a certain order, to you know, make this thing happen. It's like, okay, let's pretend like they're not doing that, which maybe they're not. I don't know. You know, like I haven't been in any meetings where they're talking about like how they're going to do this stuff. But it's about the direction. It's about the trajectory. If you extrapolate this line into the future of the way that we're going and the way that we're dehumanizing people, basically, and the way that we're becoming more okay with the top parts of our government having more power in the lower parts of our government, it's just like not a good thing, especially when there's a lot of rhetoric around a new world order. Like, again, that's not crazy to think. It's been something that, you know, I've known about for a while because I was able to get that knowledge at some point before now. But like, this lady from Ukraine said it like it's just common knowledge. So like, it's just with that type of an idea going around, and already in the population, in the populace, we have this idea that this really top-down governance into smaller areas is okay. It's just not a good trajectory for moving forward. So again, you got to stop and think. You got to stop and think and be like, why am I okay with this? Or am I okay with this? Or why am I not okay with this? And then from there we can, like, you can start to move forward a little bit. But it's just, again, the whole whirlwind of ideas and things. And, you know, I like a lot of the stuff that they've got us split up on have been really emotional for a lot of people. But it's like, the people on the other side of that argument are humans too, and they're just trying to stop their suffering the same as you're trying to stop yours. And that's just what's happening.
Yeah. I've got something to ask you.
Yeah.
Why, if you just put aside for a second the human suffering angle and think politically, why does Putin need to be stopped? Kind of taking the other side of it, what if Putin's endgame comes into fruition, and what do you think Putin's endgame is? Because it's hard to tell because he's psycho, but
I don't know. Like, I feel like, okay, so the way that I look at it right now is we've weakened our societies. Like, the Western societies have been weakened. And you can tell this by the types of leaders that we have now. And, you know, it's not like, I don't know, like, not weakened as in, no, okay, maybe that's the wrong word. We've been weakened. Like, we have weak leaders in power. And I think that it's been because of the attack on masculinity over the last while. And Putin has not been doing that. Like, he's been, like, on the other side of that, like, hyper-masculine, and promoting hyper-masculinity, which also is bad. Like, both sides of this thing are bad. And so, in one case we have a matriarchy, which is where 100% safety, all your needs are taken care of. You don't have to make any decisions. I'll do it for you. Like all of that type of stuff. And I know what's best. Here it is for you. And then on the other side, with the hyper masculine, we have like domination, aggression, fighting. Like it's all about like get what you can and fight for it. Like, and it, like neither of those are okay. Neither of those are okay. But it seems as though the only way to get into political power is to choose one of those two sides, because that way you're extreme enough that people who are extreme about what you believe will vote for you with like a lot of passion. So like more people will come out to vote for you, which I think is sort of part of the reason why our democracy hasn't been working well. I don't know. I think that all makes sense. But like Putin's endgame, I think, is just to sort of have like a hyper masculine man's world where it's all about like it's like a game of Risk.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Most
like a game of
definitely.
Risk.
I mean,
It already
the
sort of
U.S.
is.
put their pieces too close to my border.
Yeah.
Get them.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think that our end game is exactly what I just said. Like, don't worry, we'll take care of you. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. Blah blah. But you have to do what I say because, you know, I'm still.
Yeah. The thing is, like oddly, both sides are extremely authoritarian.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Like the world is becoming extremely authoritarian because of this pandemic. I feel like that's why, as well as all these power hungry, like politicians out there, whether they be alpha or omega males.
Yeah. Right.
Like yeah, it's all bad stuff. Like the power hungry people, the divisiveness, the authoritarianism, the fear. It's all amassing together into a big clump of just like totalitarianism, like from either side. Like Putin has been totalitarian for a while, but like on a world, like they're stepping up the stage, like from national or even continental to international. Everybody has to think the same way as me, or else they're enemies of the world, which is crazy to think. How can you be an enemy of the world when you're literally a part of the world?
Yeah, like you are one of the pieces on the world that makes up what the world is. So you can't be against it because
like,
you are it.
Again, like Michael Jackson freaking said, "We are the world." So we can't be like we are the world. So how can we be enemies of the world when it is us? Yeah. I guess you can be an enemy to yourself, but I feel like these people with these toxic traits, like
that is being an enemy to yourself.
That's being an enemy to yourself and an enemy to the world. Like that's what being an enemy to the world is.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like they say, the line between good and evil is within each man and each woman. And so it just takes, I don't know, some critical thinking on our own part, like every person, and it takes knowledge as well. Like you need to be able to learn what's going on in the world, sort of, and not even necessarily like what's going on directly right now, which I mean, you can learn that. It's pretty good to learn, but just like how things work, and then you need to move through the world sort of in a way that you're doing what you think is good, You do, like, just try to be good. And the issue is that there are actually evil, like, people who choose to be bad. Like in Star Wars, like, you switch to the dark side because there's more power. Like, yeah, there's more power initially, but like, love trumps all. And
So
it just takes a shift, like,
Yeah.
a consciousness shift in all of the people towards, like, loving each other, being nice to each other, being good to each other.
Yeah. I think that's where, like, our roles as Canadians begins, is to just think for yourself about how you think what is happening may change the world and what you want to do about it. And then again, make sure that, like, you love humans and love this world above all else. Like all you need is love, and then you can take the next step, which is, what do you actually want to do about it? Like there's got to be people who are gonna be fighting against Russia, because we can't have Russia taking over the world. That's not what we're here trying to say. Like, we don't want Russia to take over the world, and obviously there's got to be people who are fighting against it. So if that's what you want to do, and like that's how you see yourself showing your love to the world and changing the world for the better, then, like, power to you. And I love that. That's not at all what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
Even if it comes to, like, a draft or get knocked in the head and then brought to a draft, like, I'm going to oppose the war in all aspects of myself. But in terms of, like, what we were talking about and doing something actual humanitarian, like, I would love to do that, and I've done it before, and it's, like, something that, like, especially right now, I want to start getting back into. But the thing is that they've stopped me from even being able to do that in the past.
Yeah.
But now that we're getting back to something, hopefully I'll be able to actually be able to, like, consciously put myself and my love for this world, like, into action. Because they've stopped it, and I feel like what's going to happen is they're not going to allow that, and eventually it'll come to a draft, and I'm not going to have that option. Like, I'm not going to have the option to actually do something humanitarian rather than killing people for the betterment of the new world order.
I feel like it's one of those things where, you know, you might have to fight on the side of your enemy, but only to the point that it is beneficial to you.
Or to the world.
Or to the world. Like, you know, you join the military, let's say, right now. And this is, like, a weird time to be joining the military, because there's such crazy things happening politically. But it's like, if you'd go and join the military now to go fight against Russia, it's like, that's great, because, like, this needs to end. Like what's going on now, like, that needs to stop. But it's like, to what end for you personally? Because if you're just going to do the bidding of your leaders no matter what, like, that puts every person in a bad position.
Exactly.
Not even just yourself. So, like, you gotta remember that while you're doing anyone's bidding, really. And, you know, walk away when it's time to walk away, because we know how far it can go. It can go way too far. Like, do you think everybody who was part of the Nazi regime wanted to do everything that they did? No, probably not. Do you think all of the police who were out being a part of the battering of people in Ottawa who were fighting to get what they said was their freedoms back, what I believe to be their freedoms back, like, they didn't all want to do that, but some of them just had to because they were ordered to. It happens, like, all the time, and like I just think that this is one of those times where we need to, you know, say to people like, we got to do what we got to do, but also like remember who you are, and also remember where you come from, and also remember that humans matter first, more than any political end.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, to answer to the question, what should Canadians do, or what's Canada's role in this war, this globalist war that we've now figured out that it is a globalist war. So what do you do? The answer is pretty simple, and it's like the advice that I would give you forever and always is that just make a decision for yourself, and whatever you think is best is the best that you can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, like I just believe that people should be able to decide these things, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But really, the thing, like, just think and decide what you feel is right,
Mm-hmm.
and try and do it.
Yeah. Don't let yourself just continue on the momentum of the manipulation.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like any sort of rhetoric like
Yeah.
this, like these powerful people are always going to be trying to spur you on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like even Hitler back in the day, it didn't start with kill the Jews. It started with whatever it was, like the rhetoric of like German nationalism, and like we are the world, basically. And then it goes into like he takes that next step of saying like exterminate the Jews, like, and
Didn't get there overnight.
Yeah, like, exactly. Like the people thought it made sense, and all that I'm asking is that just don't get to that point where this leader, you're looking at Justin Trudeau, like don't just take everything he says as fact, and as making sense, because he's gonna sound like that because it's scripted. He's got it all written out, like how it's supposed to sound and what he's gonna say to get what he wants. Like that's the whole thing, is that you just gotta figure out for yourself what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And what you want to do about it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to end it. But
yeah. So hopefully we can stitch it together, and you know, we had a lot of other good stuff in there, but we forgot to hit record.
Yeah.
So
I feel like we got all our major points in there.
Yeah.
I think, but yeah. So remember to like and subscribe, right?
yes.
Hit that notification bell.
Oh yeah, the notification bell.
Help us out on Patreon or at our merch store. Get yourself a toque. It's getting cold. It's still cold out there. You could still use a toque.
I think I'm gonna start doing ball caps up here soon too.
Right.
So.
Or ball cap for the summer.
Yep.
You get to go back to play softball or baseball or whatever sports you play this summer. Hopefully, anyways. Hopefully. So yeah, get yourself a ball cap. I think that's it, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything else to say. So,
Yeah.
Oh, the love and the peace and the unity.
Love, peace, unity. Stronger than all.
Yes. All right. Peace.